Many Magic the Gathering players ask the question, is it worth it to buy an Aetherdrift commander deck? Magic's first standard set of 2025 has arrived at local game stores. And don't let the race cars fool you, this is not a Universes Beyond set. No, really, Aetherdrift is in-universe. And it's brought with it a pair of commander decks, Temur Energy and Esper Zombies, each featuring ready-to-play right-out-of-the-box 100-card commander decks, meant to be appealing to both brand-new players as well as those already established in the format. This is actually the first time a standard set has only had 2 commander decks since Wilds of Eldraine. Usually we get 4, a whopping 4 commander decks with each and every set. So, is releasing only 2 a sign that these are packed full of value? Do they contain sought-after reprints and awesome new card designs? Have they been constructed for the best possible out-of-the-box gameplay? Or is Wizards of the Coast thematically running on fumes from their own product overload? And maybe, just maybe, they needed to take a rest for Aetherdrift. Aetherdrift? Aetherdrift. Aetherdrift. It's alright, Wizards of the Coast, it's alright. It's a lot of products. Maybe only releasing 20 commander decks a year is okay. So are these 2 decks excellent engineering or disappointing duds? What do they offer, or what should they have offered to players new and old? Most importantly, how well do they play against one another, or in a pod with upgraded commander decks? All those questions and more are what's in store, so let's take a look. But first, there's no sugarcoating it. The job market is really tough right now. But you know what's a surefire way to make yourself more marketable to potential employers? Learning to code. And one of the best ways to learn how to code is with Boot.dev, sponsor of today's video. Boot.dev is a genuinely brilliant product. It's such a smart way to learn the Python and Go programming languages by making sure you're never bored by turning learning into a game. That's right, when you learn programming through Boot.dev, you're going to do so by feeling like you're playing a captivating role-playing game, all while you get your hands on the keyboard writing a ton of code and building real projects. You learned a million Magic cards and what they do, right? And you learned a million Pokemon cards and what they do, right? Well, what if you could actually learn to code while playing a game? Well, that's Boot.dev. You'll earn experience, you'll level up, get achievements, and complete quests, all while competing for a top spot on the global leaderboard. And as you go through your lessons, you'll unlock pages in your spellbook, an actual spellbook, a progressive cheat sheet of links and notes that you can review anytime. What a great way to learn to code. And if you ever do just get completely stuck and want to know how the instructor wrote the code, there are solutions available for every challenge on the site. There's also bi-monthly boss fights where the whole Boot.dev community rallies together to gain bonus experience for each lesson completed during the event. Boot.dev is an absolute godsend for anyone who wants to know how to code but struggles with staying engaged through the learning process. Go to Boot.dev and use my code Tolarian to get 25% off your entire first year if you choose the annual plan. Thanks, Boot.dev, for sponsoring this video. An Aetherdrift commander deck contains the following. 1 ready-to-play right-out-of-the-box 100-card commander deck, which itself features 2 traditional foil legendary creatures, and contains 10 brand new designs exclusive to the Commander Precon. Also included are a 2-card collector booster sample pack, 10 double-sided tokens, what is generously referred to as a deck box, as well as a strategy insert and reference card. As always, the sampler packs just have a couple random cards, sometimes foil, sometimes not, and while these are a nice sample, I don't count these as having particular added value. It's disappointing they've taken away items such as the life wheel, not to mention oversized cards, leaving Commander Precons very bare bones. So how much do these cost? Luckily, MSRP has returned for most Magic the Gathering items, and so we know that the official price on these Commander Precons is $44.99 each. I'm so glad to have MSRP back. That means you won't have to worry about price markups anymore, right? Right? Oh God, what? Really? Come on. People are selling the Zombies deck for $75? Don't pay $75 for the Zombies Precon. Just don't do it. It's not worth it. I don't care what its financial value is or how fun it might be to play with. Don't spend $75 on a standard set Commander Precon. Don't pay markups on this stuff. If you pay markups on this stuff, then they know they can succeed when they charge you markups. Don't do it. Sorry, I'm sorry. I just get frustrated sometimes. Let's assume for the remainder of this video that you've found somewhere that's selling these precons for close to their MSRP. Don't buy them for more than their MSRP, please. Commander precons almost always go down in price because there's just so many of them. Maybe the zombies deck will stay high because zombies. And yes, I do often see there's one deck from a set that maintains a high price, but you honestly are going to be fine with just about any Commander precon, especially as a new player, so there's just no need to pay these outrageous markups. Just buy an older Commander precon for at or below MSRP. Yes, below MSRP, because if you go to www.cardkingdom.com/TCC, you'll see that I've curated a collection of Commander precons for at or below MSRP. At the very least, you can browse the Prof's Picks catalog and see which old Commander precons can be snapped up at a bargain. Or just browse Card Kingdom's library of Magic cards, products, and accessories. Always support your local game store first, but if you don't have a local game store, or they don't have what you want, and you're going to shop online anyway, why not start at cardkingdom.com/TCC to support a store that has brick-and-mortar locations and has always worked with the community to build a better Magic the Gathering space. And hey, maybe you'll snap up some bargains when you do. Honestly, as someone who complains a lot about product fatigue, I am glad that Wizards of the Coast is only releasing 2 precons with this set. Commander decks used to be memorable when only one set was released once per year. Back then, the Commanders struck into the player consciousness. The new designs resonated. The reprints sang. Now, well, we literally get over 25 Commander decks a year, and it can start to feel like white noise. And yet, in all fairness, even at that output, these still often remain great products simply because 100 cards with a mix of new designs and reprints usually equals both pretty hot value as well as a deck you can play right out of the box. Now, I'll talk about gameplay in just a moment, but first, let's discuss financial value of these decks. If you were to buy the singles from each precon for their lowest price, as of the filming of this video, you would need to spend $112.92 for Eternal Might and $91.76 for Living Energy. Pretty good bang for your $45, though keep in mind these are pre-sale prices taken 24 hours before release. And also keep in mind that a lot of these cards are bulk, worth less than $1. And even 20 to 60 cent cards can add up over a Commander deck, so what if we eliminated the bulk? How much would these 2 decks cost if you only bought cards worth $1 and up? Well, Eternal Might would still hold a value of $92.66, while Living Energy would drop down a bit to $72.58. Honestly, not bad considering these values reflect 0 cards worth less than $1. But how many of those cards are there? Well, in Eternal Might, it's 29 out of 100 cards worth $1 or more. Most of the expensive cards here are the new cards, which means their price might drop considerably after release. Notable reprints in this deck, though, include the Scarab God, Zombie Master, and God Eternal Oketra. Looking at Living Energy, we see 27 out of 100 cards worth $1 or more, but here our most valuable card is just an Elder Gargaroth at $8 and change. Not a good sign out the gate. Academy Ruins follows that, also a reprint, and it isn't until our number 3 slot of Stride Hanger Automation that we see a new card design, worth only $7.94. Uh-oh. I don't like how the bulk of the value in Living Energy comes from reprints in the $2 to $10 range. But before you go dismissing this deck entirely, let's take a look at some more math. The Eternal Midnight Precon has about $20 more in value regardless of whether you eliminate the bulk. It doesn't have that many more non-bulk cards than Living Energy, since its non-bulk cards are worth more on average than Living Energy's non-bulk cards are. But don't forget about those markups. If you're only seeing Eternal Might going for $75 or more, that's a $30 increase over market value, as opposed to Living Energy, which is actually selling for less than its MSRP. So you're actually getting a better deal per dollar if you spent it on Living Energy instead of the marked up Eternal Might deck. But there's more to worth than just the financial aspect of these decks. How well constructed are they, and how well do they play against one another or in a pod with your friends? Let's talk now about gameplay. Gameplay. Eternal Might is an Esper Zombies deck with a minor sub-theme of drawing cards. The face commander is Temet, Nakatum's Will, a 5-mana 4/4 with Vigilance and Menace. Whenever you attack, you draw a card, then you discard a card. Whenever you draw a card, zombies you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. This deck has an impressive array of powerful zombie synergy cards, such as Crypt Breaker, Undead Augur, and Midnight Reaper, all of which are excellent cheap card advantage engines, not to mention the inclusion of multiple lords and creatures that ping your opponents when your zombies enter, like Corpse Knight and Wayward Servant, all of which do a great job of applying pressure. There are several cards in the list like Forgotten Creation, Prophet of the Scarab, and Pull from Tomorrow that will pump your team to ridiculous heights in tandem with your commander, threatening to attack for a huge swing without any warning. What's more, the deck is chock full of recursion and brings a nice suite of efficient interaction and board wipes, giving the deck the tools to grind into the long game, which precon games often reach. Godpharaoh's Gift is an awesome endgame card in this deck, and thanks to Gate to the Afterlife, you effectively have 2 copies of this powerful finisher. The biggest weakness to this deck is its 5-mana cost commander, which will certainly be a removal magnet for your opponents. If it gets removed even once, it will take a while to recast. And if it gets removed a second time, the double commander tax could lock you out of casting your commander for quite a while. The backup commander is actually a much more efficient card, Hashton Scarab's Fist, a 1/3 zombie warrior for 1 of each Orzhov mana with a blue triggered ability. Whenever you discard a creature card, you may pay 2 and a blue to create a 4/4 black zombie copy of that card. Unfortunately, the precon doesn't support Hashton very well if you wanted to run it as the face commander. There are some decent cards with cycling and a few discard outlets, but not enough to consistently get value out of Hashton. It's still a very cool card, but you're better off buying the single and building a completely new deck around it if this commander's gameplay excites you. The Living Energy precon is a Temur energy deck with an artifact sub-theme. The face commander is Saheeli, Radiant Creator. This is Saheeli's first card in Temur colors. You can tell she's green now because she has a green shawl in her art. The deck itself is kind of a hodgepodge of energy and artifact cards, which speaks to a core issue with the deck. There's not much overlap between artifact synergy and energy synergy. Saheeli tries her best to bridge that gap on her own, but she can only do so much. If she gets removed, or if you're kept off of her, the deck is likely to fall apart. Most of the artifact synergy cards have nothing to do with energy, and most of the energy cards aren't artifacts. If you don't draw the right mix of energy payoffs and enablers, you'll either flood out on energy with nothing good to spend it on, or you'll have a handful of payoff cards in play that can't do anything because you haven't generated enough energy. On top of all of that, the curve on this deck is ridiculously high. 14 cards in the 99 have a mana value of 5 or greater. By comparison, only 13 cards in the deck have a mana value of 2. The top-heavy curve of this deck, combined with its inelegant mix of artifact and energy themes, results in a high potential for frustrating gameplay. The backup commander is Chandra's mom, Pia Nalar, but honestly she doesn't strike me as particularly powerful or interesting. The amount of energy she gains you when a creature hits an opponent is gated at 2 energy per opponent that gets hit, and her built-in payoff, creating a flying vehicle every turn, just isn't that exciting. Is this powerful? Maybe. Kind of, but it's not a very interesting card. Especially given that this is the 3rd energy precon we've received in the past year, I'm overall quite disappointed with Living Energy. Of the 2, Eternal Might offers the better gameplay. Compared to Living Energy, it's much more cohesive. The deck is focused enough on its core zombie synergies to provide a functional deck, and its drawing cards sub-theme simply gets you more zombies to cast. Whereas Living Energy will struggle to find its footing if it draws the wrong mix of artifact and energy cards. One thing I will say is that the mana bases for both of these 3-color decks are pretty impressive as far as precons go. They've got a nice mix of untapped duals, including Pain lands, which I've been delighted to see have become auto-includes in precons lately. This time around, we also get check lands in each of the precons' colors, which is a really nice inclusion for making gameplay smoother. I'm actually surprised they don't include check lands more often, since they're very cheap these days, and therefore an easy way to boost a precon's mana base. Unfortunately, I just don't feel that solid mana bases is enough to save these decks. We've seen better in the past, and hopefully we'll see better again in the future. Final conclusion: neither of these 2 precons is terribly impressive from a financial standpoint, and once these officially hit shelves, I imagine that value will plummet greatly. From a gameplay perspective, Eternal Might is more cohesive and a fun deck to pilot, but it isn't particularly noteworthy in and of its own right. In all honesty, it looks like a good deck in comparison mostly to its counterpart, the absolute mess that is Living Energy. Nonetheless, I'm going to give Eternal Might a B+. It's still a serviceable precon in that it's a fun deck to pilot, and it contains some value in its new cards, though not much in the way of reprints. Again, I'm only giving it this grade if you're able to buy it at MSRP. There is no universe in which this deck is worth $75. I want to be very clear, at $75, this is a fail. But even at MSRP, Living Energy is a D. Its financial value isn't great, nor does the gameplay offer much to get excited about. Honestly, the most compelling case for buying this precon is that you are able to get it for about $10 below MSRP. And even then, I still think this is a disappointment. Some real lackluster offerings here this year. Now, I hope very much this video has been of some help to you. If you'd like to see me playing with Aetherdrift cards, you can check out the most recent episode of Shuffle Up and Play, where Brian Kibler joins me with Corey Baumeister and Ash Lizzle for some Aetherdrift action. Check it out here. There's like an eye or something you click, or just in the video description, or, just type Shuffle Up and Play into YouTube search. Watch a different episode. What about that one? You remember that one? That's a good one. Kyle Hill. Remember when we had Small Ant on? Small Ant. He played Commander with us. It's a fun episode. The misplay wasn't that bad in that one. Stop complaining about it. It really wasn't. And remember, if you're looking to learn how to code in the Python and Go programming languages, you can do so by playing a cool, awesome game, all through Boot.dev. I mean, you learned what all these magic cards do by playing a game. Why not actually learn to program? Well, Boot.dev takes that idea and makes it a reality. Level up, get XP, and learn a valuable job skill, all with Boot.dev. It's an absolute godsend for anyone who wants to know how to code, but struggles with staying engaged through the learning process. And right now, when you go to Boot.dev and use my code Tolarian, you'll get 25% off your entire first year if you choose the annual plan. Thank you again, Boot.dev, for sponsoring this video.